Triggered. Have you been triggered? That's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. Hello, welcome back. My name is Dom and I help people to step into their truth and power. Whether it happens online, on the phone, or in person, are you aware of when you're being triggered? Let's start first with what being triggered actually is. Being triggered, provoked, or activated occurs when we go into an outside environment that triggers some negative aspect within yourself. Maybe an addiction is activated or triggered. Maybe anger is activated or triggered. Or maybe even fear or victimhood of some kind is triggered. That triggering can cause responses within a person, and it could be an active or passive response. But typically, the triggering is caused by the actions or words of another creating an emotional state or negative energy within us that we prefer not to have. I know I prefer not to be put into a mental or emotional negative state. And this is where my spirituality really comes in, but I prefer not to be put into a mental or emotional negative state where I'm no longer connected to God. And what I mean by this is that I'm in a state of presence and I'm not looking to be validated externally or expecting to be taken care of externally, and I'm not feeling fearful or ashamed in any way. So if you want to avoid feeling triggered into negative emotion or energy, then perhaps consider some of these tips or ideas that I'm going to share today. If you've been following me, you know that I grew up an overweight and awkward kid because I was ridiculed and picked on as a kid. And so I used food for soothing, which only perpetuated the problem of being overweight. And so I struggled my whole life with emotional eating. I've since lost about 70 pounds and I've been able to keep it off for some time now. And what I've learned is that even though emotional eating isn't an addiction like alcohol or drug addiction, there is a similar behavioral connection. Even though I'm no longer the heavyweight, awkward kid, I am still sometimes battling the emotional eating. I got to do things to keep myself from being triggered back into that negative behavior. Just like a recovering alcoholic struggles with alcohol, having alcohol in his house, I struggle having ice cream. It is my favorite thing. And I won't eat the cheap stuff either. I like having the decadent stuff, the good stuff. And so if I'm emotionally triggered, my go-to is definitely ice cream. So I don't really bring that stuff into my home. And when I do purchase it for my kids, I purchase flavors that I don't like, so I'm not gonna go and eat it. Otherwise, Ben and Jerry are making good company with me on this sofa as I polish off the entire pint. So the first tip is keeping myself out of an environment that would activate my negative behaviors and creating an environment that would activate positive behavior is the key. I've come to recognize that I am fully responsible for how I'm responding to being triggered. I cannot rely on another person to be responsible for how I'm feeling. With such an expectation, I would actually be giving my personal power to them when they trigger me. As a person that doesn't want to be involved with that behavior, I am aware, and that's a harder thing to avoid because we're influenced by what we see in the movies and on news and such, and everybody we see is being triggered and reacting, and not in a positive way either, to being triggered. Reality TV and the news actually bank on people becoming triggered because it makes for dramatic storylines. It increases ratings. Hence the word dramatic here, drama. When we react to being triggered, it creates drama. But when we resist reacting off being triggered, there winds up being so much less drama. And if there's no drama, that means there's more peace. I don't know about you, I cannot stand drama. Over the years, I've had friends that just thrive in living in drama and other people's drama. And I've had to step back from that because that's not the energy I desire to be in anymore. I don't want drama, I want peace. But in order to maintain that, I have to become aware of the environments that trigger me negatively and instead create environments that support me positively. So the second tip has to do with having awareness. And so I'm curious, are you aware while it's happening that you're being triggered? Or do you become aware after you've reacted to being triggered? Share in the comments below, are you aware while it's happening that you're being triggered, or do you become aware after you've reacted? If you're one of the people responding that you become aware after you've reacted, understand that this is the answer for most people. It's not something to even be ashamed about. It's something actually to become aware of. For most people, it's after the fact, and there's usually collateral damage. There's hurt feelings and tattered relationships. This awareness that you are becoming aware of is actually an invitation to you to change, to become better. In order to become more aware, I've had to become more present. Being present in the moment allows the opportunity for me to slow my roll so I don't engage or react. When we engage by our reaction, we actually give our personal power away. But when we don't engage in reaction, we are able to maintain our personal power. We get an opportunity to, instead of reacting, respond in a more thoughtful way, a more productive way, which usually gives us a much more desirable outcome. In becoming present, I become an observer and I query how I'm feeling without reacting outwardly on those feelings. But in the political arena, I feel this is what people from both sides of the aisle need to be doing more of. In the past, and it even continues today, everybody is being triggered by somebody. And our society has adopted this idea that if you're not some kind of victim, you're a nobody in our society. We've got to move away from this kind of ideology and being triggered by those who stand in a particular belief. We'll never be able to experience peace as an individual or as a nation if we continue down this path of ideology. But the work has to start with us individually to become more emotionally intelligent about how we're showing up in different aspects of our lives and in different situations we find ourselves in. In doing this work, you'll be building up your self-esteem, and you will no longer become so dependent on external people and circumstances for your sustenance. And an accompaniment to this is that you're not so easily triggered anymore. One of the things I've recognized in my ongoing journey of my personal growth is how much power I left outside of myself. Like if another male makes me feel intimidated, or if a female makes me feel attractive, almost how that inside it like chemically changes me or something. Like, what is this trigger? And what we're talking about is an influx of like adrenaline, cortisol, dopamine, or serotonin that gets released into our physical being. But these physical hormones are triggered first by a psychic state or an external cause. So the work I've been doing has me recognizing that I can gain nothing from losing contact with who I am. And what I mean by who I am means staying anchored in faith and being truthful and honorable and within integrity within myself and all of my relationships. Now, this is almost impossible to do perfectly. But maintaining a high standard doesn't mean I'll never do any of these things again. It just means I'm going to be much less likely to do something that's really damaging or catastrophic, which would morally put me outside of being aligned to who I really want to be. And God help me to respond in my relationships in a more positive and appropriate way. So I've been making it a purpose not to be in relationships or create environments that I know may trigger me in some kind of negative way or behavior. I think it's really important to focus first on positive behaviors and positive outcomes. When we're triggered, instead of falling into the anger and fear and victimhood, if we flipped everything upside down and instead of getting into our ego and putting our focus more on the negative, focused on how to have a positive behavior, and a positive outcome from the trigger. What can we do to feel more nurtured and to feel better? This is where we have to bring our focus and attention. We aren't just triggered online or in an educational setting, but it's happening in all of the relationships we are experiencing with human beings we actually know. The reality of our lives isn't happening by interacting with our phones or social media. It's happening in the relationships we're actually having with people. Our phones and social media are just platforms. The platforms are all about making money and supporting a narrative that gives them more freedom to operate in a way that gives them an ability to make more money. Their primary goal is not to improve your life. Their primary goal is not to improve your life. It's to make money at whatever cost, even if it costs you your relationships. So suppressing certain posts or thoughts and canceling people's accounts is not the answer. The answer is in how we are conducting ourselves in the relationships we have, online and off. And that's where we need to be placing our focus. So in order not to be triggered, look at your relationship that you have with culture and be careful about the culture that you consume. I invite you to minimize it and simplify it, and look at the relationships you have in your life. If there are relationships that are continually making you feel triggered, that triggering is sending information to you that you may be in a relationship that is negative. And so I would focus on cultivating more positive practices. And for me, that includes meditating. Meditation is a very calming and healing practice to help get beneath the accumulated layers of being in anger and fear or sadness, and allowing ourselves to process it and release it so you aren't continually susceptible by these feelings and continue to be so triggered. Moving my body regularly and exercising has also been a really big thing for me. Aside from the physical benefits I get, more importantly, I'm able to release frustration and worries. It helps to clear all of that monkey mind stuff that might be going on in my mind, and it reduces anxieties, and it just makes me feel good from the endorphin release. It's an inside-out feel-good kind of experience. What I know is I don't want to be the kind of person that can't cope with the real world. I can't afford to be that kind of person, not just from a financial sense, but from a responsibility sense, being a dad and raising 2 boys of my own. I want them to learn this stuff at an early age so they're more equipped to handle resistance and life challenge in a way that allows them to lead an empowered and healthy and balanced life. And most importantly, I'm not just a father to my kids, but I'm actually a father to the child that I once was. I'm no longer that awkward, overweight kid with a low self-esteem anymore. I'm no longer seeking externally to others for nurturing so much anymore. I'm able to nurture myself. Now, of course, there are areas of my life where I still rely on other people to help me, but I try not to create codependent relationships on other people. So if you want to avoid being triggered, realize first that there is really nothing to be ashamed of if you are being triggered. It's just information that you've suffered pain in some area or aspect of your life and it needs some healing. Become aware and use that information. Try to understand why you are experiencing this triggering. Consider looking at which areas of your life you really need to maintain and which relationships you need to continue, and do the deep, necessary work of self-nurturing that will allow you to feel more safe, inner nurtured, and healed. That you can go into different environments. Not that you would needlessly wander into a negative environment, but you can confidently know that when you encounter them, as you go through this world, that you are feeling safe and that you are protected, and simply because you are no longer that fragile, delicate construct of a human being that you once believed yourself to be, but with an identity now that you have limitless power to be you, limitless power to serve others, and limitless power to love, instead of the fragile, delicate construct of our egos with an identity that can't handle the pressure of the world being put upon it. And so I'm curious, what did I share today that really resonated with you? Share it in the comments below. What did I share today that really resonated with you? Share it in the comments below because I want to be able to support you in your experience of being able to move through this. And if you're needing some additional support and would like to connect with me for a short one-on-one free call, click on the Speak with Dom link in the comments and description box below. It would be a real privilege to be able to speak with you personally. And further, I'm going to be sharing more videos on this subject in the coming days, so hit that subscribe and bell so you don't miss them. And lastly, if you would like to pay it forward, please take a moment to share this video online with your friends and family. Just take a look around our world. Our world is experiencing so much division. And I believe it's because there is a lack of connection and healthy communication and understanding. A lot of people are in this reaction mode. So it's my intention to have this information shared with as many people as possible right now. I truly believe that it is what is needed to bring more healing and understanding. And by sharing, you'll be helping to get this information out. And so until I connect with you again for my next video, stay well, stay healthy, and stay empowered.